Welcome to Starbound's very own fantasy channel. My name is the Voice Ogre, and I'll be your narrator today. Real quick, be sure to check down below to see if you've subscribed real quick. If not, that's fine, but it is 100% free and it helps you stay up to date. I'm pretty sure you know what subscribing does. Anyways, enjoy the video. The brand seared into Noaharo's forehead with a wet hiss of burning meat. He bit through the leather strap between his teeth, tasting copper where his molars had punched through his cheek. The iron pulled away, taking a ribbon of flesh with it. Blood ran warm down the bridge of his nose before the cold turned it to slush. "Noaharo," the warden's voice crackled through a speaking grill, tinny and distant behind thickened glass. "For the murder of 43 souls during a sanctioned ceasefire, for violating the conventions of war established between the Bastion and the northern clans, for bringing dishonor upon mankind's mission of survival." The words meant nothing. Static. White noise against the ringing in his ears. 2 guards stripped him. His ranger's gear, the insulated leathers that had kept him alive for 6 years of patrols, the ice axe that had saved him from a dozen crevasse falls, the repeating crossbow he'd cleaned every night like a prayer. All of it disappeared into an iron-bound chest. They left him in his thin woolens. Nothing else. One guard paused at Noah's closed fist. "Open it." Noah's fingers uncurled. A river stone, smooth and gray. Unremarkable except for the rusty stain across its surface. Tom's blood. The guard reached for it. "Please." The words scraped out of Noah's throat. The guard looked to the warden. A brief nod. The stone stayed. They shoved him through the gates. The barons hit him like 1,000 tiny pinpricks. A killing cold. With winds that cut through his woolens like tissue paper. The gates clanged shut. The great bolts slammed home with a final heavy clang. Noah stumbled forward. 1 step, 2. His bare feet broke through the ice crust, plunging into powder snow that burned worse than the brand. Behind him, the bastion's walls rose like a mountain of stone and iron. Great chimneys bleeding smoke into the darkness. Home, gone. The wind shifted, bringing the acrid smell of something burning. Not here, not now. Memory crashed over him. Wood resin popping in the heat. Flesh crackling like pork fat, giants scrambling from their longhouses, fur cloaks ablaze, children's voices pitched high and terrible. He'd block the exits first, just like they taught him in ranger training, control the battlefield, deny escape routes. Only he'd used it on families, on their holy night, the night of first snow, when even warriors laid down their axes. A giant child, maybe 6 years old, had made it to a window. Noah put 3 quarrels through its chest. Center mass, just like they'd taught him. He came back to himself on his knees in the snow, retching bile that froze before it hit the ground. Tears had frozen his eyes half shut. The brand pulsed with each heartbeat, a metronome of pain. "Get up. Move. Die on your feet." He forced himself upright. The settlement's lights painted the ice field orange behind him. Ahead, darkness and wind and the promise of a slow death. He clutched Tom's stone tighter, its edges cutting into his palm, and walked into the black. Cora's breath misted in the glacier cave, each exhalation a small ghost in the blue darkness. Her hands, massive even by giant standards, worked the ice with surprising delicacy. The sculpture taking shape was her youngest sister, barely 4 feet tall in life, a runt by their people's measure. In ice, she stood proud. 2 months since her exile. 2 months since her father's claws had opened her face like overripe fruit. The wound had healed into a thick rope of scar tissue, but it still ached when the pressure dropped. Storm coming. Always storms in the deep winter. She'd tracked the rhyme stag herd for 3 days, surviving on pine bark and the occasional ice hare. Stags were close now. She could smell their musk on the wind. Hear their heavy breathing echoing off the canyon walls. One good kill would mean meat for weeks, enough to see her through until... A sound. Not stag. Not wind. Something stumbling through the storm, breathing wrong, ragged, desperate. Cora set down her carving knife, a shard of volcanic glass she'd napped herself, and reached for her war spear. 9 feet of hardwood topped with giant forged steel. The weight of it felt good in her hands. Familiar. She expected a hunting party. Her father's warriors, come to finish what his claws had started. Make an example of the soft-hearted fool who'd looked at the human children, small, helpless, huddled in their stark stone dwellings, and couldn't bring herself to crush their skulls. Weakness, her father had called it. The humans had burned 3 villages, killed over 100 of their people. The clans demanded blood for blood, and she'd stood there, warhammer raised over a human child's form, and she felt her arm refuse the motion. The wind gusted, clearing the air for a heartbeat. Not a hunting party, a lone human, staggering through knee-deep snow. Male, young, wearing nothing but thin undergarments. He'd be dead within the hour. Then she saw his forehead. Even through the frost and blood, the brand stood out, still raw and weeping. The mark every giant child learned to recognize. War criminal, violator, butcher. She knew which one. The clans had spread word of the massacre like wildfire. 43 dead on the night of first snow. 30 warriors, 8 elders, 5 children. Their sacred night turned to ash and screams. Some of the bodies had been so badly burned they couldn't perform proper sky burial. Their souls would wander, lost until the world's end. Her cousins had been in that village. Rage hit her like an avalanche, hot and sudden, displacing the cold hunger in her gut. Her lips pulled back from her teeth. Thick canines designed for tearing frozen meat. A growl built in her chest, vibrating through the stone beneath her feet. The human hadn't seen her yet. He stumbled forward, clutching something in his fist, talking to himself, or to the dead. She'd seen that kind of cold madness before. The Baron's ate minds as surely as it ate flesh. Cora exploded from cover, crossing 30 feet in 3 strides. Her war cry, a ululating howl that turned human bowels to water, cut through the storm like a blade. The spear led, aimed for a center mass. She'd take him in the gut, let him die slow. Let him feel a fraction of what her cousins had felt. The human's head snapped up. His eyes, blue, bloodshot, half mad with cold, widened. He threw himself sideways, the spear missing by inches, and came up with a rock in his hand. Not the one he'd been clutching. A jagged piece of glacier ice. He was fast. Ranger training, probably. They moved different from the other humans. All economy and purpose. But she had reach, strength, and rage. She swept the spear in a flat arc. He ducked, came up inside her guard, and smashed the ice chunk against her knee. The joint bent sideways, not far enough to break, but enough to send lightning up her leg. She backhanded him, a casual swat that should have caved in his chest. He rolled with it, using her force to create distance, and came up with 2 more ice shards. His stance was low, balanced despite the shaking in his legs. Ready. "I know you," she said in the human tongue. The words tasted like acid. "Firebringer, child killer." Something flickered across his face. Not denial, not defiance. Recognition. Pain. Good. He didn't waste breath on words, just circled right, forcing her to pivot on her bad knee. Smart, using her size against her. She feinted with the spear butt, then whipped the blade around in a figure-8 pattern her mother had taught her. He read it, barely, throwing himself backward. The blade caught his woolens, opening a 6-inch gash. Blood welled, black in the stormlight. He stumbled. She pressed, driving him back toward the frozen river. Noah's world had shrunk to instinct and angles. Duck, roll, strike, survive. The giant, female, young despite her size, favoring her left knee now, fought like an avalanche. But avalanches were predictable if you knew how to read them. She was herding him toward the river. She could hear it groaning beneath its ice shell, water still flowing despite the killing cold. Death behind, death below. The story of his life since Tom died. Tom, always Tom. His brother's laugh echoing off canyon walls during their first patrol. Tom sketching giant petroglyphs in his notebook, trying to decode their history. Tom's head coming apart when the giant hammer found him. Brain and blood painting the snow in a pattern that almost looked like art. The giant lunged. Noah dropped, sliding between her legs on the ice, and hamstrung her with a shard of stone. Not deep. Her hide was as thick as boot leather, but enough to make her roar. She spun faster, faster than anything that size had a right to move, and caught him with the spear haft across his ribs. Something cracked. White-hot pain bloomed through his chest. He hit the ice river hard, feeling its spiderweb beneath him. She loomed over him, spear raised for the killing thrust. Blood ran down her calf, streaming in the cold. The scar on her face pulled her expression into something between a snarl and a smile.
"For my cousins,"
she said. The ice groaned, cracked. They fell together. Cold water was a living thing with teeth and claws and a terrible hunger. It punched through Cora's fur, through skin and muscle, straight to her bones. Her lungs locked. Her heart stuttered, unsure whether to race or stop entirely. The current had them, dark water, moving fast beneath deceptive stillness of winter ice. She kicked, found nothing. Kicked again, connected with something yielding. The human, still alive, still fighting. No, not fighting. Drowning. The current slammed them into a boulder. She grabbed it, claws finding purchase on the slick stone. The human hit beside her, scrabbled for a hold, slipped. The water pulled him under. Let him drown. Let the river take the butcher of first snow. Justice, cold and clean. She saw her cousin's face in the black water. Thorn, who'd carved toys for the little ones. Frost Eyes, who had been trying to grow a beard for 3 seasons and managed only patchy fuzz. Small Stone, pregnant with her first child. The human surfaced 10 feet downstream, choking. She heard her father's voice.
"We are giants. We take what we want. We crush what opposes us. That is strength."
Her mother's voice, softer, nearly forgotten.
"Strength is what you do when no one is watching, when it gains you nothing."
Cora let go of the boulder. The current took her like an eager lover, spinning her in the darkness. She tucked her limbs, made herself an arrow, and shot toward the fading splash of the human struggles. Her hand found cloth, then skin. She hauled him up, his weight nothing in the water, and fought for the surface. They broke through the water together, gasping. The human's lips were already blue, his movements sluggish. The killing chill would take him in minutes. There, a shelf of ice thick enough to hold them. She swam for it, dragging the human, and hauled them up in a cascade of freezing water. They lay gasping on opposite ends of the ice shelf. Dying, but slower now. The human rolled onto his side, coughing water. His eyes found her across the 3 feet of ice between them. Something passed between them. Not gratitude, not forgiveness, just acknowledgement. They were both dead anyway. The question was, who would last longer? The cave went deep. Noah could tell by the way sound behaved, their footsteps echoing off distant walls, water dripping somewhere in the darkness. He could tell by the air, which grew warmer the farther they descended. Geothermal, the world's blood warming the stone. He kept to the right-hand wall, feeling his way, listening to the giant's heavier tread 20 feet behind. They'd maintained that distance since crawling from the river. Close enough to track, far enough to react if one decided to finish what they'd started. His ribs screamed with each breath. Broken, probably. The brand on his forehead had gone numb, frostbite taking the nerves. Small mercy. Everything else hurt in the specific way of a body burning its last reserves to stay alive. The giant wasn't doing much better. He could hear her favoring her left leg, the scrape-thud rhythm of her gait. Could smell the blood from the wound he'd given her. Light ahead, not daylight. Too steady, too blue. Phosphorescent lichen, maybe? The cave opened into a vast chamber, ceiling lost in darkness. Floor relatively flat. Steam vents hissed from cracks in the stone. Warm, survivable. They took opposite ends without discussion. Territory claimed, boundaries established. Noah collapsed against a boulder, shaking so hard his teeth chattered. Across the chamber, Cora lowered herself carefully, keeping her spear close. For 2 days, they watched each other. Noah dozed fitfully, jerking awake whenever exhaustion took him. Each time, the giant was still there, still watching. Her eyes caught the lichen light like a cat's, waiting for weakness, waiting for an opening. On the 3rd day, hunger won. He'd eaten pine bark after the exile, a few ice-ground burrowers, melted snow for water. His body was eating itself now, muscles cannibalizing for fuel. The shaking had stopped. It's a bad sign. When the body stopped trying to warm itself, death was close. Deeper in the cave, something moved. Something big. Noah forced himself up, using the wall for support. Listened. Heavy breathing, the click of claws on stone. A cave mauler, probably. The Barrens had dozens of predator species, all of them hungry, all of them mean. He needed a weapon. The river stones in his pocket, Tom's stone and 2 others, they wouldn't cut it. He cast about, finding a likely piece of shale, and started napping. The sound carried in the cave, sharp cracks echoing. Across the chamber, Cora stirred, watching him work. The mauler emerged from a side tunnel, drawn by the sound. Massive, covered in patchy white fur, eyes reflecting red in the lichen light, ribs showing through its side, starving, desperate. It saw Noah first. Easier prey. Charged. Noah got the half-finished spear up, but his broken ribs made the movement sluggish. The creature would be on him in seconds. Those massive jaws. Cora's war spear took it in the shoulder. A perfect throw that spun the creature sideways. It roared, wheeling toward this new threat. She was already moving, snatching up a boulder the size of Noah's torso and bringing it down on the creature's skull. A crack echoed through the chamber. The mauler dropped, twitched, and went still. They stood on opposite ends of the corpse, breathing hard. Blood pooled on the stone, steaming.
Why?
Noah's voice came out rusted, unused. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she pulled a knife from her belt, stone, beautifully napped, and began butchering the carcass. Methodical cuts, wasting nothing. Once she'd taken half, she stepped back. Not kindness, pragmatism. They both needed to eat to survive. You can't kill your enemy if you're dead from starvation. Noah finished his spear and joined the butchering. They worked and ate in silence. The meat was tough, gamey, but it was calories, fuel. When they'd reduced the carcass to useful parts, Noah built a small fire near his side of the cave. The smoke would be a problem eventually, but raw meat in his condition would kill him faster than the fumes. He showed Cora how to build a smoking rack from bones and sinew, preserving the meat for travel. She watched, memorizing. Then she showed him something, reading weather in the ice formations near the cave mouth. The crystalline patterns that meant pressure changes, storm fronts, clear skies. Information that could mean life or death on the surface. They didn't speak beyond the necessary, didn't share the fire. But when Noah woke from another nightmare, Tom's head exploding in slow motion forever and ever, the giant was skinning the bear's hide, preparing it for tanning. Surviving, same as him. The human exiles found them 2 weeks later. Cora smelled them first. Unwashed bodies, infection, the particular reek of humans who had been eating human flesh. Wendigos, the folk of Bastion called them. Those who broke the last taboo when the barons had taken everything else. She was checking trap lines when they struck. 6 of them, armed with makeshift weapons, moving with the jerky coordination of the half-mad. They'd been watching, waiting for the giant and human to separate. The first human came from above, dropping from a ledge with a sharpened femur. Human femur, raised like a dagger. Cora twisted, taking the bone blade across her shoulders instead of through her neck. Hot blood ran down her back. She grabbed the Wendigo by the throat, lifted him to eye level. His face was gaunt, eyes fever bright, teeth filed to points. He'd been a man of the Bastion once, maybe even a ranger, like Noah. Now, he was just meat and madness. She crushed his windpipe and threw the body at 2 more rushing from the left. They went down in a tangle of limbs. A crossbow quarrel, crude but effective, punched through her thigh. She roared, more anger than pain, and charged at the shooter. He got 1 more shot off, missing wide before she put her spear through his sternum. Something warned her. Instinct, maybe, or the faint whistle of displaced air. She ducked. A club with studded human teeth whistled over her head. She came up swinging, caught the Wendigo with a backhand that sent him flying into the cave wall. The wet crunch of impact said that he would not be getting up. Movement to her right. She spun, spear leading, and nearly skewered Noah. He slid past her thrust, smooth as water, and put his own spear through the Wendigo trying to flank her. The man dropped, clutching his gut and screaming. Noah finished him with a quick thrust of the throat. Mercy or pragmatism? With him, Cora couldn't tell. The last Wendigo tried to run. Cora's thrown knife took him between the shoulders. He made 3 steps before collapsing. They stood amongst the bodies, breathing hard. Blood, hers, theirs, painting the snow in abstract patterns. He gestured to her wound, then to his healer's pouch. She nodded, let him approach. His hands were steady as he pushed the quarrel through, better than trying to pull it back past the barbs. She didn't flinch, but he still murmured, "Sorry," as he worked. Strange, hearing that word from the butcher of first snow. He packed the wound with moss and wrapped it tight. Efficient, practiced movements. How many giants had he patched up before? No. That way lay madness. Focus on the now, on survival. They dragged the bodies away from camp. Wendigos would attract worse scavengers. Worked together without words, each knowing their role. When the last corpse was dealt with, they returned to find their separate fires disturbed, supplies scattered. Noah surveyed the damage, then looked at her, a question in his eyes. She considered. The Wendigos knew about this cave now. There would be others, and the deep winter was coming, the real cold, when the temperatures dropped so low that exposed flesh froze in seconds. Separately, survival was assured as luck. Together. She pointed to a spot between their territories, neutral ground. He nodded. That night, for the first time, they shared a fire. The stories came slowly, drawn out by exhaustion and the strange intimacy of firelight. Noah talked first, surprising them both. Maybe it was the head wound, or the fever that came and went, or just the weight of carrying it alone. He talked about Tom, not the death, never the death, but the life.
He was an artist.
Noah fed another branch to the fire, watching the sparks rise.
Can you imagine? Hauling ass across frozen wasteland, dodging giants and worse. And he's just sketching. He's always sketching. He said he was going to chronicle this whole land. Make people understand that it wasn't just ice and death. That there was beauty here too.
His voice caught. He cleared his throat, then continued.
It used to drive me crazy on patrol. Just 5 more minutes now, look how the light hits the ice formations. 5 minutes in the wrong place out here gets you dead. But he'd get this look, you know? Like he was seeing something else that nobody could see. And, maybe he was.
Cora listened, working on a small carving. Her hands needed to be busy or they started shaking. Old habit from childhood. The giants told stories too, but theirs were formal things, passed down through generations. This rambling, personal style was different.
Last patrol,
Noah continued, staring into the fire.
he found a giant art cave. It's petroglyphs going back centuries, maybe longer. He was like a child on midwinter's morn. He spent hours copying them into his notebook, trying to work out the progression of style, the stories they told. I keep watch, right? Was grumbling the whole time, but
He pulled something from his pack. A battered notebook, water-stained but intact. Pages covered in sketches. Giant art, meticulously copied.
I went back for it, after. I just couldn't leave it to rot.
The fire popped, sending sparks spiraling up. Cora set her carving down and spoke.
My sister loved to sing.
The words felt strange in the human language, but Noah had shared his pain. Balance demanded reciprocity.
Runt of the litter. Too small to fight. Too gentle for raiding. but her voice, it could make warriors weep. She'd sing the old songs, the histories. Even my father would get quiet.
She touched the scar on her face, remembering.
The night that he exiled me, she was there, watching from behind my mother's legs as he passed judgment. I'd shamed the clan, shown weakness, failed to take blood where blood was owed. The law was clear, but when his claws opened my face, when he declared me nothing, worthless, kinless, she ran forward.
Cora's hands clenched, then relaxed.
Take me instead, she asked. I'm the weak one. I'm the burden. And my father, I had never seen him hesitate before. But for one moment, his hand shook. Then he looked at me, and I saw something break in his eyes. One is enough, he said. Go before I change my mind.
She picked up the carving again, her sister's face, half formed in wood.
I don't know if she still sings.
They sat in silence after that, but it was different from before. Less a wall, more a space where words could exist if needed. Later, when exhaustion pulled them toward sleep, Noah asked,
The children in the raid, why couldn't you? They were sleeping.
Cora's voice was steady.
Curled together like river skeevers. One of them, little girl, maybe 4 years old. She had her thumb in her mouth. She looked.
A pause.
She looked like my sister.
Noah nodded, said nothing. What was there to say? They had both failed their people's expectations. Both paid the price. That night, the nightmares came for both of them. Noah woke to his own screaming, Tom's name on his lips. Across the fire, Cora sat upright, breathing hard, one hand pressed to her scarred face. They looked at each other across the dying flames. They said nothing. Built the fire back up and sat vigil against their ghosts until dawn. The blizzard that nearly killed them both struck without warning. They were hunting, following rhyme stags through a narrow canyon. The past 3 weeks had established a rhythm. Not partnership exactly, but a functional cooperation. Noah's human eyes could spot details Cora's missed. Her strength could bring down game he could only wound. Together, they ate better than either would alone. The sky went from gray to black in minutes. The temperature plummeted. The wind rose from a whisper to a scream, driving ice crystals hard enough to draw blood. A flash freeze, the kind that killed in minutes, turning blood to slush in the veins. Noah grabbed Cora's arm, pointed to a rocky overhang barely visible through the white. She nodded, and they fought towards it together, her bulk sheltering him from the worst of the wind. The overhang was shallow, barely enough to block the horizontal snow. They pressed against the rock face, sharing what little heat they had. Not enough. Noah's shaking had stopped again, the killing cold. Cora did something unexpected. She pulled him against her, wrapping her arms around him, covering her with her bulk. Her body temperature ran higher than humans, adaptation to the climate. It was pragmatic, logical. He'd die without the warmth, and she needed him alive for hunting. That's what they told themselves. The storm raged for hours. They dozed fitfully, taking turns on watch, though there was nothing to watch but white death. Noah felt the giant's heartbeat through her ribs. steady and strong, felt her breathing sync with his. Somewhere in the white nothing, pressed between stone and giant, the taut watchfulness he'd carried since Tom's death eased, just a fraction, just for a moment. When the storm finally broke, they separated without words, went back to hunting. But that night, when they made camp, the distance between the bedrolls was less. Still wary, still watchful, but the boundary had shifted. 3 nights later, exhausted from a failed hunt, stomachs cramping with hunger, something else shifted. Noah was working on new arrowheads, trying to ignore the way his hands shook. Cora watched from across the fire, carving another figure. Him, he realized with a start, the concentration on her face as she worked the details.
Why do you make those?
He asked. She looked up, seemed to weigh the question.
To remember, my people. We carry our dead in wood and song, but I have no one to sing with now. So,
she gestured to the small army of figures.
Wood must be enough. Yeah, some love to sing.
The words slipped out before Noah could stop them.
Badly. Very badly. He couldn't carry a tune in a bucket, but he'd sing anyway. These body shanties from these old kingdoms. They'd drive everyone crazy on long patrols.
Almost a smile ghosted across Cora's face.
My sister would have tried to teach him proper pitch. Some would have loved that. He collected languages like others collected rocks. Probably would have learned giant tongue just to sing your histories back to you. Badly, you said. Oh, terribly, but with enthusiasm.
And when they were both almost laughing, exhausted and starved and broken, but for one moment the weight lifted. The fire crackled between them. The silence that followed was warm. Later, when the cold pressed close and the darkness felt too heavy, they moved their bedrolls to the same side of the fire. Not touching, but close enough to hear each other breathe. Close enough to know that they weren't alone. It wasn't forgiveness, wasn't absolution. The dead stayed dead. The crimes remained. But survival made its own rules, and the barons had worn them down to something simpler than hate. That night, Noah's nightmares were different. Tom was still there, still dying, but now Cora's cousins stood beside him, watching, waiting. When he woke, gasping, she was awake too, watching him with eyes that understood. They'd become something neither had words for. Not allies, that implied choice. Not friends, that implied forgetting. Just 2 exiles, bound by the mutual recognition that they had both been broken by the same war. And the barons was grinding them into the same shape. The next morning brought fresh snow and the promise of game. They rose, gathered their gear, and hunted together in the growing light. The silence between them had transformed from threat to understanding. But they'd grown careless. Their shared fire sent smoke into the sky. Their doubled tracks left clear signs in the snow. They'd built something like a life, and life left traces. Far to the north, following those traces with inexorable patience, Bjarg the Scarred led his hunting party south. The burned side of his face wept constantly in the cold. The nerves never properly healed. Each step sent lightning through his skull. He welcomed the pain. It kept his purpose sharp. His daughter was out there. The tracks were fresh now. A day, maybe 2. Soon. Morning came pale and bitter. The sun a distant rumor through low clouds. Noah woke to wrongness. That prickle at the base of the skull that 6 years of patrol had beaten into instinct. The birds had gone quiet. He rolled from his bedding, hand finding the spear shaft before his eyes were fully open. Across the dead fire, Cora was already up, head tilted, testing the wind. She met his gaze, nodded. Company. They moved without words, a choreography born of 3 months' survival. Weapons gathered, camp struck, the essential supplies, smoked meat, water skins, healing moss, divided and packed. Everything else abandoned. Noah climbed to the cave mouth, belly down in the snow. The storm had blown itself out overnight, leaving crystal clarity that let them see for miles. There, dark spots against white, moving with purpose. 6, no, 7 giants. They slithered back, held up 7 fingers. Cora's face went very still. She knew who led them. Had known this was coming from the moment she'd pulled Noah from the river. The Barrens was vast, but not vast enough to hide forever. Not from him.
Go.
Her voice was steady.
Back entrance. Then, no.
She blinked at the interruption. Noah checked his weapons. Spear, napped knife, 3 good throwing stones. Tom's river stone, always in his pocket.
He's not here for me,
Noah said.
Not really.
You burned.
I know what I did.
The words came out harsh. He softened them.
But this? Father coming for wayward daughter. That's older than both our peoples.
Cora's jaw tightened. For a moment, he thought she'd argue. Then her shoulders dropped.
He won't accept excuses. Won't care that I...
He gestured between them, unable to name what they'd become.
The law is law. I showed weakness. Failed my clan. And you... The butcher of first snow.
Noah touched the brand on his forehead. Now a raised pink scar.
I know.
They stood facing each other in the cave mouth. 3 months of shared survival. Of slowly learning to see each other as more than enemy. More than monster. Of building something that had no name, but mattered anyway.
He will challenge you. I'll accept. You'll die. Probably. That's not...
She stopped. Tried again.
You don't understand. My father, he's... Before the burning, he was formidable. Now, the pain has made him something else. He doesn't just want you dead, he wants you broken.
Noah thought of Tom, of the months after, when every giant face was the one that had killed his brother. When rage was the only thing that got him out of bed.
I understand,
he said quietly. Movement below. The hunting party had reached the lower slopes. Even at this distance, Noah could make out the lead figure. Massive even for a giant, moving with a slight hitch that spoke of old pain. Half of his face was a melted ruin of scar tissue, Noah's work. His masterpiece of hatred.
There's another way,
Cora said suddenly.
We run, together. South, past the human lands, into the volcanic plains. Neither human nor giant hunts there. We could... No.
Noah checked the edge on his knife.
Running makes it worse. This ends today, one way or another.
She grabbed his shoulder, turned him to face her. Her green eyes were bright with something that might have been tears if giants cried.
You stupid human,
she said.
You don't have to die for my mistakes. I'm not dying for yours.
Noah covered her hand with his, small against her massive fingers.
I'm dying for mine. There's a difference.
They had minutes at most. Noah pulled Tom's notebook from his pack, pressed it into her hands.
Keep this, whatever happens. Tom, he would have wanted someone to remember that there was beauty here too.
Cora's fingers closed around the notebook. Then she pulled him close, awkward with the size difference, but her intent was clear. They held each other for a heartbeat, too. The first time they'd embraced without the excuse of survival.
Try not to die too quickly,
she said against his hair.
I'd hate to miss it while pissing.
I'll do my best to die entertainingly. They separated, gathered their weapons, walked out together to meet what was coming. Bjorg the Scarred stood in the killing ground. A flat expanse of wind-scoured stone 50 yards from the cave. His warriors flanked him in a loose semicircle. They carried weapons, but kept them lowered. This wasn't a raid. It was judgment. The burned side of his face was worse than Cora remembered. The flesh had healed badly, twisted and ropey, pulling his left eye half closed. Constant pain had carved deep lines around his mouth, but his good eye was sharp as ever, taking in everything. Her defensive stance, the human beside her, the careful distance between them that spoke louder than closeness.
Daughter,
His voice was gravel and rust, damaged by smoke inhalation.
you live.
Father,
She kept her tone neutral.
as do you.
His gaze shifted to Noah. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees.
Butcher,
Noah said nothing. There was nothing to say.
I tracked you across half the barrens.
Bjarg continued, still looking at Noah, but speaking to Cora.
Through blizzards that killed 2 of my warriors. Past human patrols that would have slain us on sight. Do you know why?
Cora's throat worked.
Because I shamed you.
No,
For the first time, Bjarg looked directly at her.
because I thought you were his prisoner. I thought the butcher had taken you for sport, torture, the things that humans do.
His expression cracked, just for a moment. Pain deeper than physical.
I came to save my daughter, and instead, I find
He gestured at their camp, the shared supplies, the casual way they stood together.
this,
It's not what you think.
Cora started.
isn't it?
Bjarg's voice rose, echoing off stone.
You sheltered him, fed him, taught him our ways. The human who burned 43 of our people alive, who killed children on our most sacred night, who gave me this.
He touched the ruined side of his face.
I didn't.
Silence!
The roar shook snow from the cave mouth.
You knew! His mark names him, and yet you chose this abomination! You chose him over your blood, your clan, your honor!
He drew himself up to his full 12-foot height. And when he spoke again, his voice carried the formal cadence of judgment.
Cora Stormcaller, you are cast out twice. Once for weakness, now for betrayal. Your name is struck from the songs. Your carvings will be shattered. You are nothing. Nothing. No one. Never was.
Each word was a gut punch. Cora stood straighter, taking them all.
And you,
Bjarg turned to Noah.
butcher, child killer, I challenge you. Single combat. To the death.
Noah stepped forward. I accept.
No weapons but what the earth provides. No quarter asked or given. Do you understand the terms?
I understand. The circle widened. Warriors and exiles alike gave the combatants room. Bjarg stripped to the waist despite the killing cold, revealing a torso covered in ritual scars and fresh burns from the morning. Noah kept his woolens. What protection they offered was negligible, but freezing to death before Bjarg could kill him seemed like poor form. They faced each other across 20 feet of stone.
Begin!
One of the warriors called. Bjarg charged. The ground shook under his steps. Nearly half a ton of muscle and rage closing the distance with shocking speed. Noah waited until the last possible second, then dove left. Bjarg's fist pulverized the stone where he'd been standing. No room for error. One solid hit would crush bones to powder. Noah rolled to his feet. Snatching up a fist-sized rock, Bjarg was already turning, reading the movement. The rock took him in the burned side of his face. He roared, more rage than pain, and swept a massive arm in a backhand that would have decapitated a human. Noah dropped flat. The swing passed inches overhead. He rolled between Bjarg's legs, came up behind, and drove a sharp stone into the giant's kidney. Bjarg spun with that impossible speed. Caught Noah with a glancing blow that lifted him off his feet. He hit hard, ribs screaming. The same ones that Cora had cracked months ago, still not fully healed. Get up. Move. Stop moving and you are dead. He forced himself to his feet. Bjarg advanced, patient now, testing. A feint left, a grab right. Noah darted in, not aiming for a killing blow, but for something more tactical. He drove a jagged shard of granite deep into the soft tissue behind Bjarg's right knee, twisting it before pulling free. The giant roared, a sound of fury mixed with the sharp, structural pain, and his right leg buckled for just a moment before he caught his balance.
You fight like a coward.
Bjarg growled, now favoring the leg slightly.
All tricks and running.
Noah didn't waste a breath responding. Cowardice was staying alive. Everything else was philosophy. He avoided another grab, but Bjarg was learning his rhythm. The giant anticipated his dodge and caught Noah's wrist. Bones ground together. The knife fell from nerveless fingers. Bjarg lifted him one-handed, bringing him to eye level.
You took my cousins,
the giant said.
My peace, my face. What else?
Noah met his gaze, saw past the monster of his nightmares to the father beneath, the mirror of his own grief.
Everything,
Noah said.
Same as you took from me.
Something shifted in Bjarg's expression. For a moment, the rage cleared, leaving only pain. Then he slammed Noah into the ground. Cora bit through her lip to keep from crying out. The human hit the stone with a wet crack. Didn't move. Bjarg stood over him, chest heaving. Blood ran from a dozen small wounds, but he was still standing, still strong. Noah wasn't. Her father reached down, grabbed the human by the throat, lifted him again. Noah's head lolled, semi-conscious. Blood ran from his nose, his mouth.
Look at him,
Bjarg said, turning so the other warriors could see.
This is what breaks when it meets giant strength. This is why we are supreme!
It was playing to the crowd now, making it a lesson. Noah's feet kicked weakly, seeking purchase that wasn't there.
For 43 lives!
Bjarg intoned, raising his other fist.
For the night of first snow! For...
Noah's hand moved. Barely a twitch, but Cora saw it. Saw him pull something from his pocket. The river stone. Tom's stone. With the last of his strength, with perfect, desperate accuracy, he whipped it. The stone struck the giant's already injured right knee with a sickening thud. The joint, its supporting tendons shredded, gave way with a wet tearing sound. Bjarg screamed. His leg buckled. His grip loosened. Noah fell, hitting the ground and rolling, using momentum to scramble forward. As the giant struggled to stay upright on one good leg, Noah kicked out with all his remaining force, striking the back of the ruined knee. The leg collapsed completely. Bjarg went down like a felled tree, his roar of rage turning into one of agony. He tried to rise, but the limb was useless. He fell back, clutching his ruined knee. Noah crawled to a boulder, used it to pull himself upright. Found another stone, larger, jagged, a killing stone. He limped towards the fallen giant.
Do it,
Bjarg snarled through gritted teeth.
Finish your work, butcher.
Noah stood over him, stone raised. The moment stretched and broke. Noah fell to his knees. The stone tumbled from nerveless fingers. He pressed his forehead to the frozen ground. Submission, surrender, something else?
I'm sorry.
The words came out broken, barely audible.
I'm so fucking sorry.
Bjarg stared. The watching giant shifted, uncertain. Noah's shoulders shook. He was crying, ugly, wrenching sobs that seemed torn from somewhere deep.
Your brother's dead. Your kin are dead. I killed them. I killed children. I became the monster that you named me.
He looked up, met Bjarg's eyes. Tears had frozen on his cheeks.
I see them. I see them every night. 43 faces. No, I know their names now. Cora told me. Thorn, Frost Eyes, Small Stone, and Unborn. I carry them. I carry them like stones in my chest.
He crawled forward, pressed his branded forehead to the ground at Bjarg's feet.
I can't bring them back. I can't undo it. But I'm done. I'm done adding to the count. So you can kill me if you want. That is your right. But I am done.
Silence stretched across the killing ground. Even the wind had stilled. Bjarg's hand moved to his belt knife, drew it slowly.
Father,
Cora stepped forward.
please. Stay back.
But his voice lacked conviction. He stared at the human prostrated before him, at the brand that marked him as the worst of his kind, at the broken man who had once been the butcher of first snow.
You think your words balance blood?
Bjarg asked.
No,
Noah didn't raise his head.
nothing balances blood. That's why it never stops. Blood for blood, on until everyone's dead and the Barons wins. Pretty words.
The knife shook in Bjarg's grip.
My kin are still ash. Yes. My face still burns. Yes. Yes. You still did this. Yes.
Bjarg's expression cracked. The knife fell from nerveless fingers.
I hate you, he said. With everything that I have, I hate you. I know. It won't stop. This feeling, this rage. I know that too.
They stared at each other, giant and human, grieving father and brother. Cora knelt beside them, placed one hand on her father's shoulder, the other on Noah's.
There has to be a way,
she said softly.
not forgiveness, not forgetting, but forward, together. Together.
Bjarg laughed bitterly.
Human and giant, after everything. After everything.
She confirmed.
Because of everything. Because of the alternative is this.
She gestured at the blood on stone, the cycle of violence.
Forever. The clans will never accept it. Some will. The tired ones. The ones who've lost enough.
She looked at the other warriors.
The ones who want their children to grow up to be something more than corpses.
Bjarg closed his eyes. When he opened them, something had shifted.
Get me up,
he said. Noah and Cora helped him stand, supporting his weight.
There's a valley,
Cora said.
south of here. Steam vents. Game, shelter, room for both peoples. If they're willing to work for it instead of against each other. A dream,
Bjarg said.
a chance,
Cora corrected.
that's all. A chance to try to build something different.
Bjarg was quiet for a long moment. Then,
I'll need a walking stick. This knee won't hold weight ever again. I'll carve you one.
Cora offered.
No,
He looked at Noah.
the human will. From Elder Steelwood. So that I remember every step how I came to need it. And why I chose to stop.
Noah nodded.
I can do that.
It wasn't forgiveness. Would never be forgiveness. But it was a start. 8 months later, the settlement had grown beyond anyone's wildest hopes. Giants and humans working side by side, building something new in the Valley of Steam Vents. Not many, maybe 60 souls total, drawn by whispers of a place where war didn't reach, where survival mattered more than ancient hate. It wasn't easy. Fights broke out regularly. Trust came hard when every instinct screamed enemy. But empty bellies and killing cold had a way of rearranging priorities. Noah stood on the ridge above the settlement, watching mixed patrols return from hunting, giants and humans moving together, covering each other's weaknesses. It still felt surreal.
Brooding again?
Cora climbed up beside him. Even sitting, she towered over him.
Thinking. Dangerous habit.
He smiled. Still a rare thing, but less rare than before.
How's your father? Complaining about his knee. Complaining about humans. Complaining about the smell of the steam vents.
She paused.
Teaching the young ones to read weather signs. Human young ones. All young ones. Says if they're going to survive here, they need to know the barrens like giants do.
They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over their impossible experiment. The brand on Noah's forehead had faded to a white scar. He still wore it, would always wear it, but it no longer defined him.
Council meeting tonight,
Cora said eventually.
About the new arrivals from the northern clans. They're struggling with the arrangement.
They'll adapt or they'll leave. Noah had gotten pragmatic about it.
That's how this works? Spoken like a true diplomat.
Bite me. She laughed, a sound that still surprised him. Giants laughed differently than humans. Deeper, but the joy was still the same.
Actually,
she said, growing serious.
There is something else. Before the meeting.
Something in her tone made him look up. She wasn't meeting his eyes. What kind of something?
The kind where...
She took a breath.
Where I need you and my father in the lodge. Alone. To discuss... logistics.
Logistics?
Shut up.
I didn't say anything.
Your face said things.
My face is very quiet. She cuffed him gently, but it still rocked him sideways.
Just be there.
The lodge was warm, fire crackling in the central pit. Bjarg sat on a bench, his carved walking stick across his knees. The stick Noah had made, hand-carved steel wood with intertwining human and giant motifs. A daily reminder of choices made.
You summoned us, daughter.
Cora stood before them, uncharacteristically formal.
I did.
Noah took his place, wondering at the tension in the room. Even Bjarg seemed uncertain.
There is something that you both need to know.
Cora began.
Something that will affect the settlement. The future. Everything trying to build here.
She paused, gathering courage.
I am with child.
The silence was absolute. Noah's brain seemed to stutter, refusing to process the words. Bjarg's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Then, in perfect unison,
What?
The synchronized outburst shattered the tension. Cora's lips twitched into a smile.
You heard me.
But, Noah started.
How?
Bjarg said. They looked at each other, back at Cora. The implications crashed over them like an avalanche.
Is that even possible?
Noah's voice cracked like a teenager's.
Apparently. But the size difference in the... Not discussing that with my father present. I don't want to know,
Bjarg said quickly. Then, to Noah.
You did this.
I mean, technically we both did...
Not discussing.
Bjarg slumped on the bench, looking every one of his years.
A grandchild. Half human.
This will complicate things, Noah said, master of understatement.
It will.
Cora's voice was steady.
There will be those on both sides who see it as an abomination, who will want to...
She touched her still flat stomach protectively.
They will have to go through me,
Bjarg growled, and seemed surprised at himself. And me, Noah added.
And the entire settlement, if I have anything to say about it.
Cora looked between them.
This child, our child, it will be living proof that the old ways don't have to define us, that we can make something new. Or they'll be caught between worlds,
Bjarg said quietly.
belonging to neither.
They'll belong here, Noah said firmly. Cora smiled at him. The expression still transformed her face, softening the warrior into something else.
So,
Bjarg said after a moment.
do I have to call him son now?
Let's stick with Noah.
Thank the ancestors. Son would have made me vomit.
Likewise, father.
I'm right here,
Cora reminded them. They subsided, but Noah caught what might have been amusement in Bjarg's eye. His good eye. Outside, the settlement went about its evening routines. Giants and humans sharing meals, mending tools, preparing for tomorrow's challenges. It wasn't perfect, might never be perfect, but it was theirs. On the mantle of the lodge, Tom's riverstone sat in a place of honor. Just a stone, worn smooth by water and time, but also a reminder of loss, of choice, of the moment when the cycle broke. Next to it, Cora had placed one of her carvings, 2 figures, giant and human, standing together against the storm. Spring came late, but came nonetheless. In the growing dusk, the settlement's hearthlights came on one by one. Giants and humans, criminals and exiles, the lost and the finding, all of them choosing every day to try something different. It was enough.